There's a kind of quiet that sinks into your bones, deep in the woods, when the sun dips below the tree line. Not a peaceful quiet. No, this is a waiting quiet. A quiet that listens back. A silence so heavy, you can almost taste the metallic tang of fear on your tongue. Tonight, we're going into that quiet. We're going to hear a story about what happens when silence becomes a predator, when the isolation you crave turns into a cage, and when you realize you're not alone at all. This is Sarah's story, and it's real, every chilling, breath-stealing moment of it. Sarah just wanted to escape. You know the feeling, right? The city hum, the endless demands, the constant noise. She craved silence, a place where the only sound would be her own thoughts. So when she inherited this old cabin from a great aunt she barely remembered, it felt like fate. A secluded, rustic retreat deep in the remote wilderness of upstate New York. No cell service, no internet, just her, a stack of books, and the whispering pines. Perfect, or so she thought. The drive was long, twisting through dense, ancient forests. The road narrowed, eventually turning into a barely there dirt path, swallowed by overgrown ferns and gnarled roots. The air grew colder, heavier, even in late summer. When she finally saw it, nestled in a clearing like a forgotten relic, a shiver ran down her spine. The cabin was older than she'd imagined. Dark, weathered wood, a sagging porch. Windows that looked like vacant eyes staring out from under heavy brows of eaves. It felt less like a welcoming haven and more like a place that had been left alone for a very, very long time. And not by choice. But Sarah pushed the feeling away. It's just old, she told herself, the words feeling thin and unconvincing in the oppressive silence. The engine died, and the sudden quiet was absolute. Not a bird, not a cricket. Just the faint rustle of leaves in a breeze that wasn't there. She pulled her bags from the trunk, the crunch of her boots on the gravel sounding impossibly loud. The lock on the front door was stiff, groaning as she forced it open. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of damp earth, decaying wood, and something metallic and faintly sweet, like old blood and dust. It sent a cold prickle up her arms. The interior was dim, even with the afternoon sun trying to pierce the grimy window panes. Cobwebs draped like ghostly curtains. Furniture was draped in white sheets, giving the room a spectral quality. She found the fuse box, wrestled with the rusty switches, and with a hesitant flicker, the single bare bulb in the living room ceiling came to life, casting long, dancing shadows. Her cell phone displayed no service, just as she'd wanted. Now it felt less liberating, more like a sentence. That first night, the darkness outside the cabin was an impenetrable wall. The kind of darkness that feels like a physical presence pressing against the glass. Sarah tried to read, but her eyes kept drifting to the windows. Every creak of the old house, every sigh of the wind through the eaves, sounded amplified, distorted. Was that the house settling, or something else? She swore she heard a twig snap right outside the porch, a distinct crunch that wasn't quite natural. Then another, and another, slow, deliberate footsteps. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She froze, book forgotten. The sound stopped directly outside her living room window. She held her breath, straining her ears. Nothing, just that heavy, waiting silence. It's an animal, she whispered to the empty room, her voice shaking. A deer. Or a bear, but it hadn't sounded like 4 paws. It had sounded like 2. She dragged a heavy armchair in front of the front door, just in case. Sleep didn't come easy. Every shadow danced with unseen shapes. Every distant rustle became a whisper. The next morning, the sun seemed to mock her with its cheerfulness. She felt foolish, exhausted. Just a spooky old house in the woods, she rationalized, pouring herself a cup of instant coffee. She decided to explore the property, maybe shake off the lingering dread. But as she stepped onto the porch, she stopped dead. On the dusty, dry wood, right in front of the steps, was a clear, muddy footprint, large, barefoot, and pointing towards the cabin. It hadn't been there when she arrived. The ground around the cabin was dry too, no mud anywhere else. Her blood ran cold. She spent the day trying to clean, trying to distract herself. Every time she looked up, she felt an intense, undeniable sensation of being watched. From the dense tree line, from the dark corners of the house. She'd turn quickly, but there was never anything there. just the swaying trees, the empty room. By late afternoon, the air grew heavy again. A chill wind picked up, rattling the loose panes in the windows. The quiet returned, but it was different now. It was no longer waiting. It felt like it was closing in. Night 2. Sarah barricaded the front door again, adding more furniture. She locked all the windows, even the ones that seemed permanently stuck shut. She kept every light on, though the dim bulbs did little to push back the encroaching darkness. She tried to convince herself it was her imagination, the isolation playing tricks, but then she heard it, not outside, inside, from upstairs, a faint, dragging sound, like something being pulled across the floorboards, slowly, deliberately. Her breath hitched. The cabin only had 2 bedrooms upstairs, both empty, covered in those white sheets. She hadn't even gone up there. The sound continued, a rhythmic scrape, scrape, scrape. It was moving, heading towards the stairs. Panic clawed at her throat. She gripped the antique poker from beside the fireplace, her knuckles white. The scraping stopped at the top of the stairs, then a distinct thump, like something heavy had just landed on the first step. Silence. A terrifying absolute silence. Then another thump, closer, and another, coming down the stairs one step at a time, slow, heavy. Each impact resonated through the old house, through Sarah's very bones. She could feel the vibrations in the floor. Her heart was a frantic drum against her ribs. She backed away slowly, clutching the poker, her eyes glued to the dark archway leading to the stairs. She couldn't see anything, but she could feel it. His presence was a cold, suffocating weight in the room. The thumping stopped, just out of sight, beyond the archway. The air grew frigid, and she saw her own breath puff out in front of her. A low, guttural growl rumbled deep in the shadows. It wasn't human, it wasn't animal. It was something else, something ancient, something hungry. A foul odor, like wet earth and rotten meat, filled her nostrils. She stumbled back, hitting the wall. There was nowhere to go, no escape. Then from the darkness of the archway, 2 pinpricks of light ignited. Not bright, but like embers, burning a malevolent red. They were low to the ground, maybe 3 feet up, and they were staring directly at her. She couldn't make out a shape, just the consuming darkness and those terrible, burning eyes. She screamed, a raw, primal sound that tore through the cabin. Driven by pure, unadulterated terror, Sarah didn't think, she didn't plan. She just reacted. She bolted. Towards the back door, past the living room, through the small, cramped kitchen. The back door was a flimsy thing, old wood. She fumbled with the latch, her fingers numb with fear. Behind her, she heard a sickening thud, 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 as whatever it was lunged into the living room, knocking over furniture. The red eyes flashed in the archway, closing the distance. With a desperate wrench, the door burst open, revealing the equally black night outside. She didn't hesitate. She plunged into the woods, not caring about the brambles tearing at her clothes, the branches whipping her face. She ran blindly, fueled by adrenaline and the horrifying image of those burning red eyes. Behind her, she heard it, not just the thudding, but a rustling, a heavy, unnatural crashing through the undergrowth, keeping pace. It was following her, it wanted her. She ran until her lungs burned, until her legs felt like lead. She tripped, fell, scrambled up, and kept going. The sounds behind her grew fainter, then closer again. It was playing with her, hunting her. Just as she thought she couldn't take another step, she saw a faint light in the distance. A road, a miracle. With a final surge of desperate energy, she broke through the tree line, stumbling onto the asphalt. A car, headlights, coming towards her. She waved her arms, screaming, tears streaming down her face. The car screeched to a halt. A bewildered couple stared at her, a wild, disheveled woman emerging from the pitch-black woods. She sobbed, pointing back towards the darkness, trying to explain. They took her to the nearest town, to the police. The officers were kind, but skeptical. They went back to the cabin the next day. They found it exactly as Sarah had described. Furniture overturned, muddy footprints, large and bare, leading from the porch, through the living room, up the stairs, and back down again. But no sign of an intruder, no evidence of a break-in. Nothing to explain the growls, the eyes, the terrifying pursuit. They suggested she might have been disoriented, stressed, a vivid nightmare brought on by isolation. Sarah never went back to that cabin. She sold it sight unseen to a developer who wanted to tear it down. But the image of those burning red eyes, of the crushing, predatory silence, of the growl that vibrated through her soul, it never left her. She still wakes up sometimes, convinced she can feel the frigid air, smell the damp earth and rotten meat, and hear that slow, deliberate thump-thump-thump coming down the stairs. Because some things, once they find you, they never truly let go, and some silences, deep in the woods, aren't waiting for you to leave. They're waiting for you to arrive, just like it was waiting for Sarah. And maybe, just maybe, it's still waiting for the next one to step into that quiet. So tell me, have you ever really been alone? Or has something been listening back the whole time?